The Celts declared the oak the king of trees. When Robin Hood's gang were stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, oaks were the trees his band of outlaws escaped to. The party king himself, Charles II, was defeated by Oliver Cromwell, and he hid in a tree much like this one. A decade later, after a short trip to the Netherlands, he retook the throne. Now, some of this might be fairy tale and folklore. Oaks may never have been the protector of a made-up Robin Hood, but the oak's protective spirit is real for British wildlife. Oak woodland provides the homes for thousands of species of plants, animals and fungi across the UK. Unfortunately, oak populations are in decline in the southeast of England. I am currently standing in the beautiful Hainault Forest. This is one of the few remaining fragments of the mighty Forest of Essex. As London grew, the oak was called upon for firewood to feed the ovens and timber to build ships. Gradually, the Forest of Essex was cleared for resources, farming and living space. For the trees that remain, climate change and a new disease, aptly named acute oak decline, are now hampering the southeast oaks. All is not lost. In managed areas like Hainault, woodland trusts are replanting swathes of new forest. At 9 AM in September, myself and the 3 people filming this video stood right here, and over the next 5 hours collected leaves from 100 oaks across this area in the west of Hainault. Later in the lab, we extracted the DNA from these leaves and sent them to the Earlham Institute in Norwich. They sequenced the DNA and sent back a jumble of short DNA strands. We put these together like a jigsaw puzzle using something called a reference genome as a template. The final product is nearly the full ordered DNA sequence of the 100 oaks. Now we have our ordered DNA sequences for each oak, we need to analyse them in a way which is useful. We look to the genetic diversity of Hainault's oaks, as this can inform us about the health of this woodland now and into the future. How will Hainault be able to cope with climate change and other environmental changes? So what is genetic diversity and why is it important? Let's start with a single gene. Each oak tree, like humans, inherits 2 versions of that gene, one from its mum and one from its dad. Each version is called an allele. When both alleles are the same, we say the gene is homozygous. When they differ, the gene is heterozygous. Since genes direct how an organism grows and functions, differences between alleles can lead to slightly different traits. Okay, now let's look at 2 groups of 5 oak trees on 2 islands. On this island, every tree has the same 2 alleles in this gene. This is allele A. On this island, 2 trees have 2 copies of allele A, but 2 trees have both allele A and allele B. The last tree on island 2 has 2 copies of allele B. Currently, the environment these trees are growing in means that all 10 trees are healthy. However, climate change gets worse and the environment is now hotter and drier. Luckily, allele B makes the tree better at holding water, so trees with this allele can survive droughts. As the droughts become more frequent, the trees on island 1 die, as do the trees on island 2. These 3 trees on island 2, however, survive and reproduce, and the population keeps going despite the droughts. They are able to cope with the environmental change. In truth, oaks have around 26,000 genes, and it's rare for just one gene to control something as big as drought tolerance. Instead, many genes each contribute to a small piece of the puzzle: disease resistance, heat tolerance, water efficiency, and more. Having lots of different alleles across many genes, i.e. a high genetic diversity, means a population can adapt to future environmental changes more quickly and effectively. Let's go back to Hainault. This is a forest that has 2 sections. One has been replanted and one is ancient. We were worried that the acorns used to replant the forest may have all come from the same parent, or even worse, they were grown from cuttings. Plant cuttings are where you take a piece of plant like a stem or a leaf and put it into the soil. It grows into an entirely new plant. This, however, means that cuttings are genetically identical to their parents. If the new trees were sourced via cuttings from just a few plants, there would be very low genetic diversity in the regrown oaks. We calculated the heterozygosity of the average oak in the ancient population and the average oak in the regrowth population. The regrowth population was heterozygous in 0.5% of all their genes, and the ancient population was at 0.6% of genes. This may not seem like a lot, but humans are heterozygous in just 0.1% of their genes. That tiny figure produces the variance we see in people. From me to this researcher, to this researcher, to this researcher. This means the genetic toolbox of these oaks is well stocked. This is fantastic news for the future of this woodland. So both ancient and modern populations have well-stocked genetic toolboxes, but can they share them? The answer is again good news. We have found that ancient and regrowth areas have not become genetically different, suggesting good gene flow across the 2 populations. Gene flow means that individuals from the ancient population are breeding with individuals from the regrowth population. Importantly, all oaks at Hainault can share their genetic toolboxes. Even though genetic tools can be shared across the whole population, there's an interesting pattern if we look further. We see that trees close together tend to be a bit more related than those further apart. This is called an isolation by distance model. Why is this? Well, acorns which develop from mum trees are heavy and often fall nearby. Animals like squirrels may move them, but generally they don't travel far. As a result, new trees grow close to their mum, creating clusters of related individuals. Fortunately, pollen, which is the male sex cell, is very light and can be carried on the wind for a long time. This allows pollen to travel further than acorns, meaning this individual can still get tools from this individual. Pollen helps to prevent genetic isolation between distant trees. In Hainault Forest, this pattern of isolation by distance suggests that while local oak populations remain genetically connected through pollen, the dispersal limitations of acorns contribute to genetic clustering. Fortunately, the ability of pollen to travel long distances means that Hainault's oaks might get genetic tools from other Forest of Essex fragments like Epping and beyond. What if a climate catastrophe wiped out Hainault? Well, one of my research team brings good news from Europe. He compared the Hainault oaks to an oak genome on the continent. He found that genetically, these populations were very similar, which is good because they could be used to replant areas like this in the event of an emergency, as they should be able to cope with the environment. Now, much more research would be needed, but results like this are encouraging. Our research on the forest behind me suggests that Hainault is healthy, and the Woodlands Trust has done a fantastic job at replanting the forest to maintain genetic diversity. I guess what I'm really trying to say is, just like myself, Hainault has all the tools it needs for the future.